afternoon. Welcome to the Government Operations Committee. Welcome everybody around the table and in the room, and those who are watching online. Today, okay, I get a motion for the approval of the October 23rd, 23 meeting minutes.
So, Chair, one thing I just want to bring before y'all do that, we did gray shade the copy that's in front of y'all. So, Ms. Jean caught something when we sent it out that and so you'll see that there's a gray shade on page 2. Just want to make that clear since it was different than what we emailed last year. And we appreciate Ms. Jean for always keeping an eye.
The gray shade?
Put the one more time.
Oh, that's fine.
Just the word ordinance got out of there. Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. A motion to approval with the edits.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Along the October 23rd meetings are approved. And now we're going to get to the first of the meeting, our BACs and evaluation of inclusivity. We'll start with the BAC. And over a week ago, we got a long email, but it was a long email. It was dealt with 3 ordinances with AIM, ACAC, and there was just one general rule. So I'd like to kick that off to Josh Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we're working on BACs and the BAC procedure, and this is going to be an ongoing item for a little while. So today we wanted to spend some time talking about three BACs, because last meeting y'all said you'd like to see some examples of ordinances and what we need to work on. And so Attorney Hines has picked 3 really important BACs for y'all to look at, and she's picked it for specific reasons because there's opportunities to create consistency across all the BACs in the ordinances themselves and what we require for bylaws. So today's discussion with BACs is going to focus on this, and Attorney Hines is going to walk us through the 3 policies. But then Jeff has also finished an update of the BAC spreadsheet, and he's brought copies of that because y'all asked for some tweaks. So we're going to be refining that BAC spreadsheet list this whole time. And so we're going to think of that as a living document, but we'll give you that update before we move on to the second item after Sherry's done. So with that, I'll pick it off to Sherry.
So I think, does everybody have a packet? Yeah, I think everybody does. So I think I'd like to start with the Commission on People with Disabilities, just because it's probably the fastest that we can walk through. So if everyone wants to look at that document, it says Chapter 1-16, Commission on People with Disabilities. This one, I think, as everyone knows, this entity has been defunct for a long period of time, unfortunately. And the reason I pulled it out is because it's actually one of our more important BACs in the sense that it is actually referenced in our ADA transition plan, which is something that GDOT requires of us. And it certainly deals with some important, or could certainly deal with some important issues related to disability access. And so I wanted to highlight that. There's also, of course, some potential concern that maybe the HRC has supplanted this body in some ways, or maybe that they have different purposes, or maybe that they should have different purposes. So I think that's a question for the Mayor and Commission. But in terms of like looking at this and just kind of highlighting some concerns, I'll just share in terms of the appointment. I think this is the reason that it has largely been defunct, is because it is currently drafted to consist of 30 members. Which is just an astronomical number to expect. But there's some interesting things in the way it was worded. I don't actually know how old this ordinance is. I probably should look that up, but even the appointment terms are strange. So this says, of course, 11 members shall be selected initially by the Mayor and Commission of Athens-Clarke County, which is our normal process. The Mayor and Commission would appoint BACs that are created by ordinance. But then it says 11 members shall be selected initially by the Commission on People with Disabilities to represent the community. So there's just a fundamental question of how could an entity that doesn't exist then select its members. So I don't know if it was intended that the first 11 would then make recommendations, but there's not a lot of clarity here. And then it goes on to say again that 8 members will be nominated by the Commission on People with Disabilities so as to represent these following areas. So this is a little bit unusual in that most of our BACs, not all, but most of the BACs are drafted in such a way that the commission has full authority as to who they're going to appoint and select. And this is one of them that specifically carved out appointment powers or nomination powers by the entity itself. Moving on, just a couple other things to highlight. It's a little bit interesting in that next section where it says whenever a vacancy exists. This is one that, again, the appropriate body, as it says above, is going to make nominations. So again, this commission would have had the authority to nominate people as opposed to giving the mayor and commission the full authority to select independently. And it also says members shall reside or be employed in Athens-Clarke County. And again, I don't know why that is, because all of our BACs, to my knowledge, have required members to live in Athens-Clarke County. So this is kind of a unique issue. It also says that the ADA coordinator will be the ex officio member. I don't actually know if we have an official ADA coordinator at the moment.
The role is assigned.
Okay.
We don't have a job title that says ADA coordinator, but it's the HR director and risk.
Excellent. So we do have that role then.
So you could be asking for a position someday that would be that.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to say it, never.
And then just as a highlight on that section E, that this is a body that's advisory in nature. So they do have some authority to move forward with community events. It does talk about them soliciting or accepting donations and appropriations of money. So there is some reference to use of funds, but there's no real clarity as to what this body should do with those funds and things like that. And then there's a couple areas of specific authority on the next page. But again, most are fairly general. And I think that this ordinance could benefit from some more direction as to what the sort of nitty gritty of what this entity is intended to do. So does anyone have a question about this entity? Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was
Yeah, go ahead.
confused about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
When I read this, and that was my first question. Then when was this ordinance put in place? Anybody?
It's actually
It's 1992.
Yeah, this ordinance was actually enacted by the city sometime in the 80s.
Oh,
It was
okay.
carried forward when we reconciled the codes.
Okay.
If you see 92, that's when we had 2 years to reconcile the city and the county. Yeah, so 92 was when we brought this one into the ACC code. It's still in effect. It was repealed in August of 92.
You say,
Repealed from the city. So we had repealed the city and the county and put the ACC together.
okay.
So the city would have been repealed, but it was brought forward exactly like this in the old city code.
Well, almost the essence, the thing need to be completely redone,
Yeah.
almost. I mean, back from,
Could. I think we would just have to update our ADA transition plan for sure, because it is a required element of that plan right now, but I don't know that GDOT has a strong preference of what we call it. Like, I don't know it has to be called this, and I would need to look into that.
and to Josh's point, I think if we're gonna be serious about people with disabilities, I think we really need to, if you're gonna put that in the budget, have somebody who's really gonna concentrate on, as a city, as a government, dealing with people with disabilities stuff. Now, it could be within the inclusion office, it could be on HR, but I think, again, I'm not sure how the budget's gonna work, but if our recommendation and we all agree, I think it should be a possible position we need to fund and hire somebody for that. But again, I know we're just not going over it, but it most definitely, I read, I said, I need to totally work.
Yeah.
For sure, so.
Are there any other BACs that accept donations?
So actually, we're going to talk about ACAC as one of them as well. And that's a reasonable question. Should an BAC have any authority related to, like, they may recommend accepting a donation, but should that ultimately rest with the mayor and commission?
Yeah, and that's what, we don't want to get into, I think, we should BAC. Go out and say, this is part of the American commission. I think that's how we can get into some reference in that possible, borderlines a little bit, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Or Jeff was kind of have to remind me that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful also has that ability. So again, there's just some interesting differences across the BACs.
So this is needed because it's part of the ADA transition plan. So one of my train of thought is consolidating some of these BACs as well. So could this potentially go under HRC? They deal with human relations, they deal with this type of stuff.
Yeah, I just need to check to see what GDOT's regulations are, and I apologize, I didn't have a chance to do that before today, to see if they specifically require a commission on persons with disabilities, or if it can be called a different thing, but I would assume it can be called a different thing, but I just, I don't know that for sure.
The inclusion supports the HRC.
Right.
Yeah.
So my train of thought, if we have what is that person? An ADA coordinator, can we just put the legal definition of just the title of, can that coordinator, do the work for GDOT? Or does the commission have to be formed?
So I need to go back and look at the transition plan in more detail, but it's not so much that we're doing quote work for GDOT. It's more about having a plan to increase disability access moving forward, like with sidewalks, roadways, and such. So I'm not sure that a single individual can take the place of a committee, but I'm happy to research that.
So this is what I'm trying to get at. Like, if we have an ADA coordinator in place to do the work and look at facilities and look at, all this stuff, then this committee would not be necessarily needed.
The transition plan already contemplates also having a coordinator, is my understanding, but also.
It sounds like this committee or commission was formed in response to the Americans with Disability Act in order to transition our own codes and ordinance to accommodate the provisions of that federal legislation. So, I guess they were probably really active in those early years in incorporating, and changing our code. I'm wondering, what would the mission of this commission be in today's?
Yeah.
We do incorporate those provisions into all our building codes. So I think we probably should ask that, like, what would the mission of this commission be before we think of its structure?
I think that's a great question, Commissioner, and I think one that we need to ask for each of these BACs and make sure that that's clear in their ordinance, the why that the commission has.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great example of that, but we see that across a lot of these ordinances.
Did you have any historical knowledge you want to share?
This was set up, I think, to encourage the employment of people with disabilities and encourage employers to hire people who otherwise would not be hired. And each year they had a banquet at the end of the year that recognized the employee of the year and the employer of the year. And those people were recognized for the service, also for hiring of handicapped or disabilities, whatever. So it was actually to encourage all people to have an opportunity and to recognize those people who went above and beyond.
And one of their areas of authority is related to the private sector. So thank you for sharing that.
So we can redo this, but maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think this commission should be done away with if it's possible and put under the ADA coordinator.
So, but because again, I know when we did the consolidation, and I hadn't read that charter. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with on our consolidation, was this part ADA, was that anywhere in our charter that you know of?
This is not in the charter. This is in the code, and you can absolutely abolish it if you choose to. I just need to check on the transition plan.
Okay.
But I can get back to you at our next meeting.
What do y'all think?
Or before.
I think we need to get more information.
Okay.
Before we think about abolishing it.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people that live in our community, that visit our community, know that we take disability, people with disabilities seriously. So, I don't want to just say, it made it like we don't care about that information. So again, I think we need more information and maybe come back, whether we should keep this on.
Yeah, I think understanding a clear mission for an entity like this in today's climate, when we've been able to incorporate so much of that federal direction into, it might be that the HRC can undertake some of that advisory capacity, because there's certainly always room for advisory
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've had issues, for sure.
that would make sense, Patrick, if we did buy from on that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But so you got guidance.
Mhm.
Yep, no, that's right.
And this is just, so the other thing to think about when we look at this one is, and some of these haven't been looked at in some time. Right, yeah. So we would encourage an overall review of all of these, but we just picked a few of them.
Yeah.
You can kind of see why. And maybe moving forward, every 3 to 5 years, we do a review of all the ordinances to make sure they're up to date. And that might be a recommendation as well.
Listen, and I had looked at all our ordinance and resolutions, but do we have any more, because this is 1992, so do we have any more that might be that old?
I mean, we certainly have BCs that are that old.
Greenway Commission might be.
Yeah. So,
Waste, KACCB.
yeah, there are quite a few that's old, and
Yeah.
a lot of them were brought forward from the city and the county, so there could be some old ones.
So let's move on to Athens in Motion, just so I think that'll be a little simpler. If you kind of build to looking at ACAC. I want to start with Athens in Motion's resolution. So the first part, and apologize that we didn't catch this in our office, but BACs are supposed to be created by ordinance. So there is a question of what is Athens in Motion intended to be? Is it intended to be a formal, ongoing organization where the mayor and commission are the ones appointing the members? I think that is the case. The commission has certainly always appointed members to AIM in the past, at least that's my understanding. So the first thing we would need to do is, if we wanted to be in compliance with our charter, is to create an ordinance that establishes AIM, not this resolution. But secondly, if you look to the second page, section 1 there at the top is the only thing that gives any direction as to what AIM is for. And so if you look at it, it says it's established to advise the mayor and commission on the development, implementation, and modification of an Athens in Motion plan for a safe and connected network of bicycle and pedestrian facilities throughout Athens-Clarke County with consideration of various different factors. I think that it's probably fair to say that what Athens in Motion is actively doing has gone beyond that, because the plan has already been established. And now it's more about like implementation and other types of advice. And so ideally, it would be nice to I'm assuming that the will of the body is to continue AIM, which I think it is, to have an ordinance that really outlines what we actually expect them to do. Because this doesn't give us a lot of guidance. And part of the reason is that when we were working with the liaisons, and by that I mean when the attorney's office is working with the liaisons, and the BAC members ask us, hey, can we do this? Or say, we would like to do this. Our job is always to say, well, what is your authority? And so we go back to your creation document and I say, well, the problem is I don't have a really clear thing that says this is your authority to do X, Y, and Z. Like, are they allowed to go table at events or to spend money tabling events or things like that? This, they're clearly doing it, but that doesn't really give us a lot of authority. So then we look to their bylaws. Now, the interesting thing about bylaws is that in a typical world, bylaws are created by the entity. And they're not allowed to exceed whatever the original creation forming document is. AIMS actually does. Now, it was approved by the mayor and commission, so I guess we would say that you gave them that authority. But under section 1.5, you'll see that there's actually a lot more of an expanded scope or more detailed scope than was put in the resolution. So they have the ability to seek grants. They have the ability to conduct educational safety and encouragement programs in support of active transportation. They can coordinate active transportation efforts to support other transportation-related activities. So that's Athens Transit, Rails to Trails, et cetera. And they can recommend to the mayor and commission financial and/or other incentives to preserve, enhance, or further the purpose of AIM. But what's interesting about that too is we get into this with ACAC, and I think a little bit with, or actually definitely with AIM, is budgetary authority. Like, you all approve a budget, but nothing in here. I mean, nothing here directly speaks to they have the authority to spend funds. So they certainly have the ability to conduct programs, and presumably there may be some expense related to programs. But there's not clear guidance on what they're supposed to be using that budget for. And so again, when the staff liaison comes to me and says, hey, can we do X? I'm looking for that authority. And then the question is, well, what was the budget? What was approved by the mayor and commission? And is that clearly in line with these things? And is that what the mayor and commission expected? So it creates this situation where we're having to ask a lot of questions and we're not entirely sure what the mayor and commission's intent may have been. And I think that'll be a little more clear with ACAC in a few minutes. But it's something that it would be helpful to clear up, both in terms of their ultimate purpose and also any future activities that the commission would like them to engage in.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You helped set this up.
No, I didn't. I was on the cultural affairs.
Okay.
But, I mean, I was on the commission when we set this up.
Yeah.
A big, advocate of getting a committee like this off the ground, from day one, and that plan. And I feel like, section 1.5 and authority falls pretty clearly under this mission, this section 1 mission and the resolution. In the idea of implementation and modification of that plan. I mean, in order to implement a plan, you need to have community buy-in. I mean, that's one of the biggest things we have is people are not informed when they're getting new transportation in their community. And you get pushback on the tail end when you really need to educate on the front end. And I feel like that is a huge role of this commission, a really important role of this commission. And I feel like, all 4 of these points fall under that mission. And that plan was meant to be organic, to change as our community changes, as we get new housing and new services in different parts of the community. That AIM plan was meant to, be alterable. It's not set in stone, and that these authority points allow this commission to, do that.
So what I might say, Commissioner, is I think what we would recommend is, and we've had conversations with AIM and the manager's office, with the attorney's office, especially their staff liaison. We would recommend an ordinance, and that these authority items be in that ordinance, not the bylaws.
Okay.
This is just an example, and we had this with the Solid Waste Advisory Committee about a year ago. They were by resolution, and typically when we see that, that's to go do one thing and then be done. And so the mayor might assign one thing, go do it. Once it's done, y'all's work is done. And so that's why we switched SWAC to ordinance, because it wasn't one thing. So all we're saying here is it's different that it was done this way by a resolution and a bylaws. We would recommend some of this detail be in an ordinance and flesh out section 1 with it. And I think, that's just an opportunity. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, I would like to see that kind of mission expanded a little to assure that we're getting input from AIM on all projects, not necessarily ones that just come through like SPLOST or through the AIM plan, I mean, we had an example this past week with a CDO, that didn't get vetted by this commission that we specifically formed to vet these kind of projects. So, I kind of feel like, nothing's worse than putting in some really expensive infrastructure and then having massive community outroar on the tail end when people didn't even know that, their front yard was going to get dug up for a sidewalk, or, their parking spaces were going to go away for bike lanes.
Jeff Montgomery.
Yes.
Yeah, raise your hand.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention kind of one thing when putting those out, because I think both of these, you all had noted that people on Commission on People with Disabilities and HRC may have some overlap. I was going to point out with some of this too, like I know that Athens in Motion and the Oconee River Greenway Commission sometimes have had some overlap, and to sort of illustrate to Sherry's point before about spelling out some of those areas, I know that's been a challenge, I think, on certain things as well. And just both of those commissions kind of have that issue that we were talking about. I just wanted to mention that.
Yep. And if I can speak to your point, I think what we're seeing is that the commission recognizes that most of these VCs are really valuable, and there is this expansion of their scope. And I don't mean to say mission creep in like a negative way, but just in we really want them to do X and we want them to do Y, but it never gets updated or reflected in their official forming documents. And so that's where it puts staff in a difficult position of, I don't know if you actually can do X or Y, because it would be helpful to have it spelled out. So when we created the Public Safety Civilian Oversight Board and HRC, I think we were trying to be really deliberate to spell out their powers and their duties a little bit more clearly than what's been done in the past. And so that's what we'd ask here, is just whatever you want them to do, if we can just make it really clear what that is.
So, I saw, or I see AIM, bigger than just the AIM plan, but just look at improving, pedestrian and bike infrastructure throughout ACC, but, you know, what's your?
You know, I mean, well, you know, even with our infrastructure, with our, sewer system and water system, again, I don't know whether it will fall on the A, but again, I think it should be more than bike lanes and walkways and things like that. I think maybe, like Sherry mentioned, when we expand that scope. Now, I say that, you know, and it's great that we have these boards and authorities. I don't want boards and authorities to get to the point that they're gonna make the final decision. And sometimes, and I know we sort of ran that with Peace Corps a little bit, that, you know, they thought they could do certain things and we had to reel them back in.
That's right.
So I think that we just need to be mindful, you know, we most definitely want your input and we hope that input is really good, but the final analysis lies with the mayor commission.
Yeah,
And something that needs to really be clear.
Yes.
I agree with that.
From that perspective. And also another thing, and also I'll look at, and the makeup should be, you know, with ain't all I can do, we need to make sure that we're gonna put certain entities within our community that's gonna appoint people. We make sure some of those people are represented in those entities. And maybe with some of our big BAC, that may not be the case.
And Commissioner Fisher, Peace Corps is a great example because the ordinance is very clear. And that's what we used when we did have conversations with Peace Corps, we pointed to the ordinance time and time again. I think that was helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's all we're speaking about here is staff gets put in an interesting position with some of these BACs because they don't have clarity on mission and the ordinances don't exist or aren't clear enough. So what we might do as a GOC, you might recommend, here's the ordinances for BACs that need more work. And here is our recommendation as a GOC for staff to work with the clerk and the attorney's office to further update, you know, I don't know how, because there could be a lot of these. And our part, is the GOC going to go through all of them and clarify mission, or are you going to make a recommendation for something else? I'm just trying to think about next steps for the GOC.
So, yeah, because over a month, so most of these are online, and some of these are state entities or that you can't do much about, but I even had a question of like, why some have 9 members, some have 12 members, some have 5 members? Can we be consistent, like everybody have 9 members or 10 members? Even then we have a uniform way of addressing a quorum. It'd be easier to understand. Also, when members are elected, can it be calendar year or can it be July 1st? But some of these just have like, and I'm a part of this too, with HRC with 17 members, like, what was going on? What were we thinking? Like, what was happening? But I mean, but y'all get what I'm saying? Like, none of these are uniform, and I try to go through the research, do the history, and figure out like why does this entity have 5, 4, 7, but
I think with HRC, something like that, you wanted to assure, because the Human Relations Commission and it's supposed to express, you know, diversity, you want to make sure you have representation, you know, like if we are considering getting rid of the Disabilities Commission, you know, you want to assure that there is adequate representation of people with disabilities on that HRC. So I feel like some of these commissions do need to be bigger, so they do have the representation that's necessary for their mission.
I would disagree.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, and with something like AIM, like they're so active and we have so many projects that they need to consider. Like, I feel like you need a pretty big commission for that. Also, you do want to have broad representation across the geographical community. entity like that.
Yeah.
But some of them, maybe not so much. Maybe 5 or 8 members is adequate for their mission.
What are your thoughts?
Same here, and I get to look at each of the BACs and what are their roles and responsibilities and what they bring to the table. I agree with Commissioner Lynch. Something like AIM, may need to be bigger because, AIM, in essence, affects this whole community. I mean, if you think about when we try to put in bike lanes or sidewalks or new infrastructure, it affects a lot of folks. So that could possibly be a bigger BAC, whereas something, I don't know, may not require but 5 or 6 people, I think we have to look at the impact of that particular BAC on the community. I think that's how we make it look at it. And I agree with her. Even if we did 9, let's say we go up to say 9 on all the BACs, we would have enough representation though out of that 9 to really represent the broad spectrum of the community.
And I also want some assurance that you're not only going to have people that have actual technical expertise in the area, but general citizens, so you get that broad perspective.
One thing to consider, and this is an example of that, is as we go through the different ordinances, one of the things the attorney's office has mentioned is making sure that there's a requirement of a standard level of bylaws. And in those bylaws, you could require some of those things you're looking for consistency wise. Maybe it's not number of members, but maybe it's, how members come on, when someone's considered not to be an active member anymore, what happens when that happens? We could put more on them on the front end to say your bylaws have to include this at the very least. And that's how you might build consistency across.
Can we do that? Let's do that.
Absolutely. And it's wonderful you brought that up because the next thing I was going to mention on this is that AIM's bylaws actually allow them to remove a member. And that's typically not something that we would allow. Normally the authority that adds the people has the authority to remove them. And so having some consistency of what that looks like would be really important. And we could do that by, having a set ordinance, for example, that just specifically applies to all commission created BACs. Or we could have sort of the way that we have the purchasing manual, obviously a very different thing. We could have part of the ordinance that says all BACs shall, utilize the bylaws template as maintained by the manager's office or something like that. That could include some of that basic requirements.
And look, and if you look at the peace call, like I think and I've been on part of that committee, we really are sharing and doing a great job of really tightening that up. And I think those members now really understand their role.
Yeah.
I think that could be a perfect example that we're making use of the rest of BAC because they really understand their role, and stuff. So it would be helpful. We can use some of that language possible when we got peace call and moving forward with the rest of BAC.
So let's look at a broad standard level of bylaws, to form consistency across all BACs. It's gonna be a massive undertaking, but let's look at all BACs individually. What do y'all think? One by one?
I think it would be a good exercise to go through them one by one, so we're all familiar with their mission and if we are looking at consolidating or winnowing them down to fewer members,
Okay. And you did bring up something about donations. I'm gonna carry ACCB. They're in their bylaws, they accept donations just for the daffodils for their events. But that helps beautify Athens-Clarke County roadways. When it comes to ACAC, Athens in Motion, and these other entities, they are fundraising for like events, so they can do like Christmas parties or tabling events with by marketing stuff. So we need to eliminate that. That needs to come out of the budget, right?
CAC has the ability for donations to come in to actually fund public art beyond what one spent on budget.
But I think a lot of it was intended for grants potentially, like grants and donations.
Matching,
Yeah.
Like, for instance, say, I don't know, say someone who really cares about bike lanes or bikes and generally wants to donate, $1 million of their estate to some sort of project moving forward.
that needs to come to the American Commission though. It can be vetted by,
The acceptance of them always comes to us.
yeah.
When
It is strange because I think it says for both of these, and I just let me look really quick, but I think it says accept donations.
you set a limit on it.
Okay, so ACAC does say solicit and recommend acceptance, but I think AIM was a little bit different. One of these is different.
So it might take legally, when a BAC accepts funds, it should come through the Mayor Commission. What?
I think that's
For, just for legal reasons, making sure like people are not doing,
No, I think we're gonna show you character.
yeah.
A bunch of money.
Yeah. So both the Commission on Persons with Disability and AIM say seek federal, state, and private foundation funds. So I guess the question is, does seek also mean that they can accept? And certainly it also says solicit private donations. But no, I think that's really important. And that gets to the ACAC conversation we had previously about, they may be empowered to sort of run a grant program, but they shouldn't be making the final decisions on awards because otherwise it's sort of abdicating the authority of the commission to BAC.
Also, we have two positions, grant writing positions. So when we created those two positions, our train of thought was they're going to handle all the grants. They're going to manage most of, with the police department, with all the departments that we have. That would be the central source for handling grant applications and stuff like that. So I believe that same conversation on the same line that BACs will fall under that as well. So there'll be some duplicity if each individual BAC had their own grant writing capability instead of going through that department. Making sense? So.
Well, also, if they get money without the government knowing about it, they could set up a program y'all know nothing about.
Yeah.
And you could obligate us with something that we had no idea was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that needs to be, they don't need to be doing something that could more people on board and more programs that you come to expect.
So could we do that all BACs go through the grant writing position?
Well, so we'll have to explore that a little bit more because those two positions support specifically HCD and the types of grants.
Yeah.
Each department pursues grants on their own, but we are working to think about how we coordinate that and centralize that into the future.
Okay.
Because there are so more grants now and they're that much more complicated. But when we do big grants, like the RAISE grant, yeah, that is a team effort and it takes coordination. But a department in their work can bring forward a grant, but remember that has to come through y'all just to apply.
Right.
The Mayor Commission had to give approval to apply for grants. And so there is a lot of opportunity to better coordinate and make sure departments are supported because there is a capacity issue there. And I think long-term, those two potential grant writers could offer training to the rest of the organization.
So,
But that's not necessarily the case how it works right now.
So like Peace Corps is their essential department, being the police department, sheriff department. They have grant writing capability.
Mm-hmm.
So if Peace Corps wanted a grant, they have to go through those departments, right?
Well, so the liaison is the Office of Operational Analysis, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the first point of contact. And then Office of Operational Analysis might speak with the different public safety agencies. But then before they apply, right, whoever's going to write the agenda item, it would have to come to the Mayor Commission to explain the grant they were pursuing and why, and then y'all would have to approve it. But yes, conceivably that.
Like the other night with the court system, the grant.
Yeah.
But
So that's what I'm saying is, and I'm thinking this, eliminating, having a structure to where these BACs go through the department liaison for the grant writing.
Yeah, that makes sense, the staff liaison, and I think that's kind of where it's similar to how we have talked to each of these staff liaisons about the budget. The budget is not the BACs, the budget is the departments who supports that BAC. And so the staff liaison and the director got to tell them, they're the ones that are really responsible for asking for the budgetary need that's needed to support that BAC. And so similar to that, if there's a grant opportunity, then that staff liaison would make sense. They will run a point on that with their department's support, of course.
So when we do the staggered level bylaws for that consistency, can we add that the language of if all grant writing will have to go through the department liaison?
Certainly could. I mean, the mayor and commission have the full authority to, or the commission has the full authority to do anything they want essentially with BACs.
Do you
I have no problem. Quite like Ms. Jean said, we don't want a BAC doing a grant, getting a grant, and we know nothing about
Yeah.
spending the money. So I think that's, yeah, there should be some checks and balances there.
And for reference, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful's board specifically says they can accept donations.
Let me point out too, if you don't mind, you're talking about reviewing all of these. This list that Jeff gave out, all the aids, we have no control over those. We can't approve their bylaws or board, whatever. Those are set by state law. What you're talking about is about 13 ordinances, resolutions on page 2 under some of them are B and some of them are A. So those are the ones you're talking about.
They don't have it yet,
Okay.
but you will.
I thought you had it with you.
I do.
Okay. Anyway, what I'm saying is only about 13 as opposed to 30-something you'd have to reconcile and be consistent with.
That's good.
It's their job easier.
There are other
That's workload.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay, sure.
Jerry, did you want to go to the last one?
Yeah, I'd like to move on to ACAC. So let's start with their ordinance. A couple things to know. This is one of the unique BACs under that membership that toward the bottom of the first page that actually nominates their own membership to the commission as opposed to you all having this total authority to interview anyone that you choose. And then they also have the authority to appoint 4 non-voting representatives to serve as members. It's a little bit different from other BACs. Moving to the next page, I'm just trying to hit some highlights. So under their powers, one thing that's been sort of a question is, it says that they have the power to appoint committees to assist with the implementation of the policies. And so a question is, did the mayor and commission intend that to be committees of the whole? In other words, like the GOC is a committee of the subset of the commission? Or does that mean that the ACAC has the authority to create citizen-led committees that don't include any of their membership? And part of the reason that's important from a staff perspective is I think they now have 8 subcommittees. And so all of those subcommittees are subject to the Open Meetings Act in the same way that that body does. So it allows the BAC, through the best of intentions and trying to accomplish good work, to create a huge impact on staff time that the commission may not have contemplated when this ordinance was first established, or perhaps they did. But just something to be aware of in terms of the authority. Another thing that was, as we talked about, as sort of a conflict is that, you know, for a while, ACAC was making awards of grants to individuals before I think the attorney's office and the manager's office realized that that was fundamentally an issue. And so I think that practice has been addressed, but there's nothing in here that says that they actually have the authority to make those kinds of decisions. So we wouldn't advise that you include it, but it's something to make it more clear that while they may manage a grant program or may make recommendations about a grant program, that they shouldn't be the final say. And I think this largely came out of the CARES Act and trying to move forward with grant funds that again kind of got ahead of what the ordinance says. So let's see, moving on. I think there's various duties, but I think this is one of them that does actually have it more spelled out, other than that there may be room to outline more specific duties that would reflect sort of an expanded expectation for ACAC. They do, you know, unlike some BACs, have funds that are directly submitted to them, and they also have the authority to submit a budget. So an example of where this has kind of created some confusion is, you know, ACAC used funds to create its own separate website. And then my understanding is they were wanting to redo that website. And so that was one of the things we came in is to say, hey, did the mayor and commission really intend that you would spend $10,000 on a new website? Or is that those funds intended for actual like public art purposes? And so again, just some clarity of like, what are they allowed to spend money on, or are they allowed to spend money on anything without coming to the mayor and commission for specific approval? So there's been some things the manager's office and I, along with their staff liaison, have been discussing about how to make that more clear, either in an ordinance or in the budget process in the future. Let's see. Also of note, both ACAC and AIMS bylaws require approval from the mayor and commission before they can be modified, because I know that was something that came up recently. But let's move on to the bylaws really quickly, because I know we're short on time. Most of the bylaws are direct cut and paste from the ordinance, but not all of them. So one thing I'll just point out is under committees, again, they have the right to establish standing and temporary committees, and this says of its members. And then it mentions involving some experts who are non-committee members. So in some ways, their bylaws seem to conflict with, well, I guess it depends on how they think about it. I know the 8 groups, I think they're calling them committees, but this says they can establish citizen panels to assist with selection of artwork and proposals. So I don't think that's what those committees are doing, but again, it's just some clarification of what they can do and what they can't would be helpful. Also noted in reviewing this for today that their Article 10 references that they can vote digitally, which is not in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. I don't think they're doing that, just to be clear, but it's something that we would want to confirm. And then again, the last section of Article 10 talks about when someone can be asked to step down. So again, that problem of lack of attendance, which we've seen time and again. You know, it's hard to hold BAC members accountable for that attendance, as we've seen with PSCOB and others. And so having some really clear automatic, you know, if you miss for a certain number of meetings without a doctor's excuse or something, and that makes it clear and doesn't create extra work. Because one of these, and I apologize, I skipped over it, but one of them actually says they can, I think it's AIM, that they can only be removed after a hearing before the commission. And I wouldn't think that the commission actually wants to have hearings about removing a BAC member for something like absenteeism. So that's a really quick review of ACAC. I'm sorry we're short on time, but this is definitely a body where I think their scope has really expanded after the creation of I guess the master plan. And so getting some better clarification would really help their staff liaison. And that.
So let me ask you a question.
Wow.
Sure. Step, and we follow the leisure services.
Yeah.
Well, Commissioner Lane, can you give us a little bit of?
ACAC.
Yeah, so the ACAC was created in response to the 1% for public art ordinance. You know, we had this dump of SPLOST projects back in, what was it, after 2011 SPLOST, that had 1% of their budget dedicated to public art. And so we put together this commission to figure out how to spend that art. You know, definitely wanted it to be a citizen-led effort. And I remember the first thing we were asked to do was come up with something to put on the parking deck, the Washington Street parking deck. And that was kind of a scramble. We didn't even have missing statements or anything. And it's, you know, we came up with the cutout panels and the banners. But, you know, we spent a good year just coming up with a mission statement and bylaws. And one of the members of the commission was an attorney who had been on a similar commission in another city that had a really active public art program. So I think that these were kind of based on that. So some of that open records or stuff that is part of Georgia law might not have been part of that law, and that's probably why it got in here. You know, it was envisioned as being a very active committee because there were lots of projects and money to spend. And art is something that, you know, it can be very controversial, but public art it's very technical. You know, and I think that I've sat on a couple of the citizen committees, and, you know, I think some of the problems that have come up have been because, you know, there are citizen committees that have more general citizens on them than people who have some established background in art or who understand the technical aspects of it. You know, the actual you know, I kind of feel like that's part of the reason we had trouble with that downtown blue squiggle, because it, you know, visually it's a great idea, but pragmatically, these things don't always work out. So, I mean, I think this is a committee that, you know, it's really important that you do have people with real expertise in it.
So this is one like 11 members. I was like, really?
It works, there's a lot of work to do. This committee does a lot. I mean, staff will testify that, you know, that's part of why we're here today, because they're running y'all ragged.
Well, if I can share on that, because one thing that did come up when we were working on this is that in the past, ACAC didn't have any staff liaison or support. And so they did have to do just a large volume of work. I think what's happened since is that staff has, now that we have Tatiana's position, that they've taken over a lot of that. And so now the body's like, okay, we're used to doing a lot of work. What do we do? And that's where I think a lot of the expansion has perhaps happened.
Okay. But no outside appointed members. I think that was mentioned that, can't vote digitally. The mayor commission, they need clear automatic ways of, abolishing or doing away with members. Did you say it has to come, so for if a member doesn't show up for a certain amount of time, it comes to the mayor commission for a hearing?
Currently, right now, there's no mechanism, I think, in really any of the BACs for an automatic removal of someone who doesn't show. Like the mayor and commission would have to take action. Now, there's one that I think it's AIM that talks about if someone in their bylaws, it says, yeah, here we go. It says any AIM member may be removed at any regular meeting upon the recommendation of the chair by a majority vote of the voting members with consent in writing of the appointing authority, which would be the commission. And then it says any AIM member may also be removed for cause by the mayor and commission after a public hearing.
We don't know, but again, I use a peace comment as an example.
Yeah.
Right. A member, was voted to, remove members, or a letter was written to the mayor for us to review. Wasn't so much of a hearing, but for us to review, to take their recommendations, and that was the clear cut. So I think we can maybe put some of that language in our, BAC that, you know, do a formal letter from that particular group, and then ask us to.
I could see how there could be some uniformity across the BACs on how that removal takes place.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these commissions only meet once a year or something, but you could say something like if you miss more than 2 meetings in a row, then the committee can recommend for removal, and the mayor and commission can approve that, approve it in the consent agenda based on, you know, something that's fairly uniform, you know, because if you have a 5-year term of a commission that meets once or twice a year, someone doesn't show up over the course of 2 years, or you have something that meets monthly, you know, planning commission or something, and someone's gone for 3 months in a row, that's a lot of work.
That's exactly right.
So it looks like you're giving, direction for uniformity across all of our BACs. Can we transition to the 13 that need to be reconciled?
Sure.
Yeah,
If that's, yeah, and I just did want to ask one question though, because you had mentioned something about them, in particular, recommending their own members.
Yeah.
There are other BACs that do that. I just want to point that out. They're not the only ones. So if you're looking for uniformity, I don't know if you're looking for that level of uniformity either, but like the Greenway Commission right now is seeking their own nominations for things. They don't go through that appointment process. So.
Problem with that, well, you know, some of these commissions that definitely.
Yeah, actually, that's a whole.
Rely on some expertise. And it also reduces the amount of work for us, like, you know, part of the reason we're here is because, you know, the mayor commission and Jean end up with a lot of work, just interviewing all these people. When you have an entity that's operating in a certain realm, you know, they can recruit members and
Well, the Greenway gets funds from us, right? They're part of our budget.
so does they have.
So to say.
Yeah, so my train of thought, if a BAC is dominating their own members, it could be a conflict of interest down the road. It could pose a conflict of interest. Because they may, am I on the right page? I just blanked out a little bit, but
So,
I don't think we have any take on it necessarily, but I just wanted to mention it, that some do that and some do not.
so y'all see no conflict of interest?
Do I say because what you do end up sometimes, you know, which most, it's just like, I'm in a fraternity, you know, normally African community friends, they got like minds. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes when you get in these, board of authorities, you know, they say, well, you know, they have the same type of interest, so there's no diversity in thought.
Right.
So I think I would suggest that we not allow them to
Yeah.
appoint their members, that they still come to the mayor commission, come again. And it's just natural. I mean, nothing against folks that want to be like-minded, but I think when we look at it from a government perspective, we want to have as many diverse laws on that,
Yeah.
you know, as possible.
or maybe we can mandate that a certain percentage be mayor and commission appointed. You know, like some of these commissions mandate that, you know, you must have one member who represents this group, and especially some of those state created ones. Maybe we can structure it like that, and, you know, certain percentage, you know, instead of having all 12 members of the body go through the whole interview process, and have, you know, a quarter of them, you know, 4 or half of them.
Well, keep in mind, the more you put on your staff, you will have to meet every single month for BACs. You know how much time it takes right now just for the ones y'all appoint. If you're talking about keeping ACC Beautiful, Connie Greenway, and all these ACAC and all these others, you will have to meet every month on BAC appointments.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, you know, by allowing some of these entities to appoint their own members, you know, we can avoid more of those long interview processes.
Just real quick,
Yeah, so let's move to the spreadsheet, and then we'll email you a digital copy of this, because Jeff's been working on this to make adjustments for what y'all were looking at.
so page 2 is probably the one, just for time purposes, to check out there, where it says created by Athens-Clarke County Ordinance and Resolution. And the way these are broken down, I put a little bit of, there's a key at the end as to what the tiers are and the categories. But just note that the category listed as B on here by a group means that they are the ones that recommend their own members. So you can see Cultural Affairs Commission, Community Tree Council, KACCB, Oconee Rivers Greenway. Those are the ones that recommend. There's the ones that have an A by them are the ones that you interview and appoint. And these tier 2s, again, these are the ones that are not sort of state and state law based. These are ones created by ordinance or resolution. And we've tried to put the information on the side there as to that. So that's probably the most key part of what we're talking today. You can look through the rest of it. But we've tried to kind of make this a little bit more along the lines of what we felt you were looking for as we go across it. And while it's easy to kind of say, oh yeah, there's only 13 BACs we need to deal with from the standpoint of ordinance and resolution, it's some of these other things like appointment process and interview stuff, to where you start taking into account 15 and 13 and, you know, the mayor appointment ones and different ones that all still have to work with open records, open meetings, staff liaisons, those kinds of things. So, but anyway, that page 2 with the ordinance and resolution, those are the ones that really we've kind of been talking about the most here.
So the 13, that goes from A through B, right?
It goes from Athens Cultural Affairs Commission to Vision Committee.
Okay, great. So
The Commission with Persons with Disabilities in the back because it's inactive, but it would be.
Correct. Yes, I'm sorry, there is that on the
be
end.
14 then.
All right. And we'll send y'all a digital copy of this, but just keep in mind, we're going to keep updating this as we go. And so we're trying to make this as accurate, you know, for each meeting, and we just wanted to check in so y'all have the most usage.
And if there's other info you want it, like a column of number of members or something, we can add those things as well.
Well, I think I've been, yeah. So we're gonna, so I think, to have, hey, can we get a number of members?
Yeah, that would be really.
Sure.
Yeah. Miss Dean,
I'm fine.
all right.
Well, I'm gonna say so. Right next to the action statement.
Right, so I know the chair had mentioned that DOC is not meeting in December, which is why we want to talk about inclusive facilities real quick before we close out. But in January, our plan is to bring forward feedback we've received from staff liaisons. So we talked a little bit about ordinance. At the manager's office and attorney's office, we work a lot with the staff liaison. So we did a survey of the liaisons just to hear some of their initial feedback. And then the group here, Jean, Jeff, Sherry, Sarah, and I, we're meeting with the staff liaisons in person between now and January to have a focus group to learn even more from them about what they're experiencing and feedback. So what we'll do is we'll package that, we'll bring that to y'all and present that in January. And if there's time, maybe we talk about a couple more ordinances, but you know, as y'all can tell, doing 3 takes up a lot of time.
So I guess my question is then, the ones that are resolutions need to go in order this year, that's okay.
Unless there, I mean, the mayor has the authority to create committees and those could be done by resolution, but all the things that are truly commission BACs that the commission appoints, those should be done by ordinance. And I think most of them are. AIM is the main thing that sticks out as an issue.
That was a resolution, but
Yeah.
and what about the culture, the ordinance?
It is ordinance.
Yeah, but can we work on a uniform consistency when it comes to bylaws?
Absolutely.
And so is everybody ready to move on to facilities?
All right, and this will be a quick check-in. Thanks, y'all, appreciate it. We've got a number of members from our team here today. And today, we just wanted to kind of remind y'all what we're talking about. So Beth Smith is our facilities management administrator. James Alexander is our assistant director of central services. And so in May, we last talked about this, so it's been a little while. So I just want to remind y'all kind of what we're working on. And staff has kept working on this, even though we haven't had time to talk about it in GOC. But the goal here was to think about ADA, you know, and we started in April and May. We talked to y'all about what the ADA says we need to be doing. We talked about some general things that we'd seen in terms of leisure services facilities and our own public facing facilities. And we talked a little bit about that. Where this all started was when the playground behind Sandy Creek Nature Center was developed, and the public shared that they weren't involved and that it wasn't accessible for certain members of the public. So the mayor at the time assigned this to the GOC. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Fisher, these things really are tied together. The BAC conversation with the BAC that was discussed, 1 to 3, and this work of inclusive facilities. So what staff has been working on since May is the 2 charges y'all gave us. One was create a pilot for one of our facilities, and y'all asked us to do that for City Hall. And so Beth today is going to talk about what she's been working on in terms of City Hall and some signs we're going to recommend that we're going to try. The second piece was, okay, let's think about bathrooms and single-use bathrooms. What are some gender-neutral signs that we can put up? Because we have a lot of single-use bathrooms, and not all of them are clear that they're gender-neutral. Some even in City Hall sit male and female, though people use them as if they're gender-neutral. We just need to fix that, right? So we're going to talk about that today too. So we're going to focus our efforts on the signage of City Hall today and single-use bathrooms. But in January and February, as time allows, we're going to have a presentation to present an audit that staff did. So inclusion and leisure services staff did an audit of all our facilities, and they found out some really great stuff. Some of the stuff which Beth and her team have already started to address, like parking spots and the color paint that need to be, like these are things we've got to knock out. But some of them have capital cost implications. And so we want to bring forward this audit to share with y'all, hey, what do we do into the future? How do we prioritize these things that are really good ideas that we don't have money for? So that's what's coming in the new year. But with that, take it to Beth for kind of an update on City Hall and bathroom signage.
Thank you. I want to say the first thing that I did was I kind of walked around the outside of City Hall and I took a look to see if I needed to get into City Hall and I needed to use a handicap door or find an accessible entrance, could I, if I didn't know where I was at? And College Avenue entrance, there is no accessible signage. The Washington Street entrance, there is no accessible signage. The only accessible entrance sign is located at a bench on a concrete patio area facing Washington Street. And it's located near the steps that leads out here at City Hall, at the steps that go up. And there is a little handicap sign that kind of points towards this back parking lot. That's it. The employee parking lot, there is no handicap parking spot designated that it is a handicap parking spot. Now, we do have a spot that could be marked and be made into a spot, but there is not a designated handicap parking spot. I did notice once you come into the building that on the first floor, we do have signage that directs the public to the stairway, but there's nothing that would let the public know or someone know where that elevator's at. You know, we could hang something from the ceiling with with an arrow on each side, double-sided sign, hey, there's the elevator. We could also do that from the second and third floor. I just need to figure out a good way to hang it because it's got a different ceiling on the second and third floor. And the second floor also has one ADA accessible bathroom and one non-ADA accessible bathroom that are for public use. So City Hall, in my opinion, would be a great place to do this pilot program. What we need to decide is what type signage you want to use, and that all comes down to the mighty dollar. You currently have a company in here. Many years ago, the government did a sign study. They did an RFP, and we chose a company called ASI out of Atlanta. And ASI does all the signage at the courthouse and at City Hall. This is what it looks like. I'm sure you've seen it. So, the bad thing about ASI, Ms. Jean, you've seen these before. The bad thing about ASI, just this pretty little frame is $150. Just the frame. If you got a frame with the sign for this is a 6x6, you're looking around. If you bought it in bundle, they'd give us a pretty good deal, but you're looking at about $260. And then the bigger the frame, the bigger the sign, the more it goes up in price. The good thing about this frame that's already in City Hall, this is from a company called, I think it's got them right here. It's called My Door Sign, mydoorsign.com. This little frame right here is $17. This one's $19. And they fit in our frame perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, so if you like your frames that you currently have that are this size, we don't have to buy frames if that's the type sign that you like. The My Door sign signage it does have the braille on it. If you don't want it in a frame, you don't have to. It comes with double-sided tape. This doesn't have it, but it'll come with double-sided tape. As a committee, what the committee needs to decide is what you want. And I've got several things here for you. I made up several packets. I mean, they have all kinds of nice stuff. But to me, this is a really nice sign. This sign is an interior sign, but the sign, everything is $101. So, I mean, a whole lot cheaper than this. And in my opinion, it looks a whole lot nicer.
Well, consistency and have the visual, keep the frame and just add the little insert.
Mm-hmm.
But if I think visible, I've actually never paid attention. These things, and also the wayfinding into City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
How much would that be?
Well, with the wayfinding, I would recommend going with an exterior sign that is more like this, that ASI, I've never bought exterior signage from ASI other than the sides, I call them the burgundy signs. The burgundy signs that are outside our buildings that have the name of the building with the
Yeah.
address on them, those are also ASI signs.
Okay.
And they're real pricey also. They're very expensive. Those are the only exterior signs we've ever bought from them. We've never bought wayfinding exterior signage from them. I'm not even sure that they make that type.
Mhm.
I would recommend going with something like this
Okay.
for exterior wayfinding.
And that's why we want to do a pilot here at City Hall, is we try a couple of these and
Yeah.
see.
See how they hold up, see how they do.
Do they have them in brighter colors?
Yes, ma'am, they do. They have them pretty much in every color you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I ride a scooter these days, and, I've noticed it's hard to find your way into buildings, or even to like get to push the button on the crosswalk, cause there's like, you know, rutted mud and mulch and stuff.
They do. They have it where you can get a blue background, a red background.
I mean, I think something a little bit bigger than that, and definitely brighter colors would be helpful, because, I mean, I've noticed the sign down here, but only because I was looking for it, and
Right.
when someone complained that they didn't know how to get around it.
Yep.
That's fine.
Mhm.
I found it.
Yep.
Been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Well, maybe what we'll do then, if y'all are okay with it, we'll go forward with just the pilot of City Hall with current funds. And what we'll try to do is all learn from it and we can talk about it. But Beth, is there anything else on the pilot?
I guess y'all need to tell me how you want so we do have the 2 restrooms on the 2nd floor. We can call them all gender. We can call them, then you can have this is like a brushed aluminum. This all gender is more like this type sign. You have all inclusive. What do you want the restaurant sign to say? So, you have this type, you have this, what do we want it to say?
We had discussed.
I'll show you.
Was. Yeah. So gender would, could be offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Word which.
Can we say, I think I'm out, can we say unisex?
Or family bathroom.
Well, I don't know if we can say family because it doesn't have the, yeah.
What is the word unisex?
Throughout county, when we require them to label their bathrooms, required by National Fire Code, also by 2010 88. It's male, female, unisex. That is the universal way, right? So, what they're required to have a ADA bathroom, the other one is not ADA, it could be labeled. The ADA bathroom labeled unisex. Well, it's gonna be labeled whatever they want to label. So I would recommend unisex at this time versus all gender or and it'll coincide with the rest of the county and other buildings throughout the county.
Yeah. Okay, so unisex.
So do you want it to, just assume this is saying unisex. Would you want it to say unisex and one have a handicap symbol and one say unisex with no handicap symbol?
Yeah, I think it's important to know which one is
Okay.
accessible.
And also our doors ADA compliant entranceways.
We do have 2 ADA compliant doors into City Hall. One right down here at the employee parking lot, and then the 1st floor entrance off of College that comes in. I call it the dungeon.
Oh, the gates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is where we want to point people toward.
Yeah, okay.
Let me ask you about the parking lot, because we don't have any, out of this parking lot, there's no space designated. So I guess my question, are we out of compliance?
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And these are the little things we caught as we went around and had our businesses.
We need, okay.
Yeah, we can fix that.
Yeah, maybe.
We can fix that.
Okay.
Yep.
need one.
Just one.
One space, the number of parking space you have, right? If you look at the 2010 ADA code, it gives you a chart, that tells you, how many spaces you need, how many parking spaces you have for, and then once you put signage out, I will observe throughout the county. We do not fly with signage throughout the county over the years. ADA code requires the sign to be 7 feet from bottom sign to the finish grade, and also your universal symbol painted in parking space, and all that needs to be blue. It's just a universal way of doing it. You see it everywhere. Should fall in line with it also.
All blue?
That way, you know, the park space line is blue,
Mm-hmm.
and the background of the universal symbol is blue. The actual handicap is white most of the time.
Okay. So, yeah, sounds like we got a plan for City Hall, pilot for City Hall. How long would that take to implement?
If I go with this type sign, are y'all okay with this material type signage? I had these when I ordered these. I had these in just a matter of a week or two.
They have to be the blue, right?
Well, for the outside, we would consider a different color. I think for the
Yeah.
inside, I don't know if we would do blue, you know.
Inside,
Please,
ma'am.
you're talking about replacing those in the gold?
Inside, I was just gonna do the 2 restroom signs.
Okay, because I like the gold. I don't like that wood. I like
Right.
wood, but I don't like that.
Yeah, I was gonna do now make sure I understand correctly. Inside, I was just gonna do the 2 restroom signage,
Mm-hmm.
and I was gonna do the elevator
Yep.
to identify it,
Mhm.
and figure out a way to identify on the 2nd and 3rd floor. That's gonna take some work. And then on the outside, I will get probably with one of my carpenters and come up with an idea of how to. It's probably going to need to be something a little bit better than this. It might even need to be an aluminum material, but what color would y'all like? Do you want like a blue or a red or a?
Blue seems to be the universal indicator, right?
Okay. Exteriors.
Try both. And so we do have 7 single-use bathrooms, I think, in City Hall. So I think we'll probably try to use the same signs for all 7.
Okay.
See if people notice them. Upstairs here still has male, female, though people don't really kind of fall in line with the male and female signs upstairs. They're treated as single-use. And so one of the things I would also say is we have, I think Beth said, over 130 public-facing single-use bathrooms, and that's not even including leisure services, right?
Correct.
And so, you know, this is a cost driver if we decide to roll this out to all of them. A lot of the leisure services ones, the parks already have the proper signage, but this is something to think about. So we want to make sure these signs work, especially we want to address the public-facing single-use bathrooms first, and then there's bathrooms, you know, that are not public-facing, as City Hall is an example of.
So, yeah, let's just, also the doors. I heard complaints about the bathroom doors are very heavy.
Mhm.
I know that's a cost, but just if I'm in a wheelchair or crutches, opening the bathroom doors can be problematic.
I can attest every door in this building is hard because I've been in a wheelchair the last several weeks and it is almost impossible to get in and out.
Yeah, so I know that's a big budgetary undertaking, but as a pilot for City Hall, was that looked at as well?
It might, in some cases, it could be just a matter of adjusting a door closer if there's door closers on it.
WD-40, some WD-40.
It could just be a matter of adjusting the tension on that door closer, so.
And one of the things you'll see when we bring the audit board is there's a recommendation to look at more doors that are automatic opening in our facilities, especially the leisure services facilities, just because it's really hard to get in and out of our old buildings with old doors. Now, that's a cost, a significant cost.
Yes.
You're putting that into an old building, but that will definitely make it easier for people as they move around the county. If we can do more of that.
All right, anything else, maybe? Anything I think of for inclusivity? Other than signs, doors, and our parking lots.
Anything else? Oh, yeah. I would look at lighting, as You Beth mentioned the dungeon. As you come in, it is very dark, and for somebody who is blind or low vision, that will become a problem and an issue. And so I would also suggest looking at lighting, and not just this building, but a lot of our buildings have lighting issues.
So, for just a pilot at the city hall, can we adjust lighting? Is there do we have an ordinance, okay, here we go. So,
You can tell in the back, we put some strong lights back.
Call Carl Jordan, he'll help you out.
Yeah.
We can't light up the sky, but we can adjust, we can, like in the dungeon, what I call the dungeon. I can look in to see if there can be, if we can add lights there to light that up. And we can look, like in bathrooms, if the light's not right in there, we can look at adding or modifying, add LED or maybe modify a fixture to where it's not, where it reflects more light. Yeah, we can look at the lighting.
anything else?
Yeah, that's the way.
Okay.
So with your doors, there's gonna be a pressure, like amount of pressure that can be applied per ADA. I forget the pound of pressure.
We're in it.
For that.
We may have found our new ADA person.
No, right here, there we go, students. All right, we'll have more in January. I know there's some new agenda items potentially coming in January, but I just want to make sure we kind of get this in there today, so you all know we're making progress. We'll continue to chip away.
I'm asking one more thing, it's not to work on until January. We're gonna take the holidays off for December. Disparity study. Can staff work on a policy and recommendation to move that to the full merit commission? Based on the study that was done.
I think it's.
That should be relatively easy, correct?
Yeah, and that's something we'll aim to bring you all a draft in
Yeah.
January. Yep.
What did the group think about getting started with the surfacing of the road or the employee engagement support?
So one of the items is the dirt road policy. If you look at the agenda, you can see all the items listed. And so there was funding, budgeted for the first time for the dirt road.
Yes.
But there's no policy. The policy needs to be refreshed. And so what we would recommend is that, and this could be like the alleyway policy, it can be real quick, but we could bring forward the draft maybe in February or January. You know, if we're doing the disparity study in January, maybe February, bring the draft. One reason I want to do that before y'all make budgetary decisions is, you know, that'll give you the opportunity to see, you know, now that we have a policy, how much of that, I think it's 200,000, do we need now? And do we need to put money in next year? Is that enough for next year?
Yeah.
That's just one thing I want to get done before y'all, because you might want to put more money in depending on the policy.
Commissioner, we got a lot, we're gonna get paid, because I'm gonna get ran out of.
So, and the question is, can we do, is the one that rises to the top in the policy, is there enough to do that? At least with the 200,000, then you can assign more for the future. Yeah, okay, we'll work on that too. All right.
Motion to, all in favor, say aye.
Thanks, y'all. Good meeting.
That's what you're doing, just sign the handicap.